Alright, I am back with another video, and today we're doing something slightly different. Usually on this channel I don't really power build. I prefer to make builds that I think are fun or interesting or just kind of based on lore, or I don't really optimize things, and I'm not really doing that for this video. But I am going to be power building in a way, because I never really do power build, and I thought, you know what, here's an interesting thing. How about I try doing something interesting with power building, while at the same time creating an interesting character around that idea. Now, if you've seen the title of this video, you're probably thinking, wow, this is probably the edgiest thing he's ever done. And honestly, yeah, you're kind of right, because the idea for this character, in my opinion, is that they were a paladin, like maybe born into a family of an oath of paladins, like basically an order of paladins who served this one god throughout all of their lineage, bleh, words. And then, when their time comes, when they've reached a higher level of holiness or a certain age, or have spent enough time in devotion to their god, they ascend to a far-off ancient realm that their god has created for them to live in eternal happiness. Now, my idea for this character is that, unlike the other members of their family, they were actually born as a tiefling. Perhaps their father, who was a member of this order of paladins, maybe got involved with a tiefling, and as such had this child. And what happened is, like all of the other sons of their lineage, or sons and daughters, he went on and trained. He devoted himself to this god throughout his whole life, and as you can see here, he's kind of a bit older, and then has seen many battles, and then when eventually he came of age, and it was his time to ascend, he was rejected because of his demonic lineage. Now, I believe this would cause him to be very fucking pissed, and as such, caused him to reject not just his own god, but all gods, seeing them as big players in a game in which mortals are all pawns to be used, discarded, and forgotten. And as such, he straight up vows that the gods will no longer rule over mortals, and that he will slay them all, getting enough power to do so no matter the cost to himself, to those around him, and will always take an opportunity to get one up on a god until he can ascend through his own power alone to bring them down. So if you hadn't guessed, this is an Oathbreaker Paladin build, and honestly, one of the coolest character concepts I've ever come up with. Yes, it's edgy as fuck. Yes, it's basically ripping off Kratos, but who cares? I really liked this one. So, and honestly, the design on this one is awesome. Unfortunately, yes, I am using mods here. I believe the face and the facial hair are vanilla, but the hair is not. This is a modded hairstyle, but everything else about this build is vanilla, although I think this dye that I'm using on the armor is modded from the boring dye pack as well. All of the mods I use are linked in the description if you want to find out how I do this stuff. Anyways, let's get into the build. First off, we are going to be kicking things off as a paladin. This is going to get us a bunch of things, but we're going to come back to this later once I've broken my oath. Next up, our ability scores. We do have 17 strength here. Yes, we are going to use the Ethel's Boon, Potion of Everlasting Vigor combo to get this up to 20 without ability score improvements, because I want to do that. And again, this is a character that will do anything for more power. It honestly feels in line with this character. Now, as for our dexterity, I'm keeping it at 10 because we don't need it as much as our other stats, because this is a heavy armor build. But if you wanted to play around with maybe the stat levels here and get this up a bit higher, or maybe even the gloves of dexterity, that's entirely up to you. But I've decided to kind of leave it at a 10. Constitution is 16. I want this to be a frontline tanky build that can take anything the gods can dish out, so I feel like 16 is a pretty appropriate number, and Charisma is at 14. I would like this higher, and you can make this higher through equipment if you like, or by adjusting stats like I said. But I feel like 14 is a good number to start with. We can give it a little bump later if we feel like it. As for our our skills, I've gone with the Acolyte background, giving us a Religion and Insight proficiency, and then I've taken Intimidation and Persuasion. Intimidation absolutely makes sense, and Persuasion is better than Medicine. And now we are an Oath. Oathbreaker, meaning that at level 1 we're going to get Spiteful Suffering as our Channel Oath ability. We are able to basically mark a target, and that target will take an extra 1d4 necrotic damage each turn, and attack rolls against it have advantage. We basically just get to pick a target and say, fuck you, you're dead. And honestly, fits perfectly for this character. At Paladin level 2, we're going to be getting a bunch of important things, namely Divine Smite. This is going to allow us to add radiant damage to our weapon. I mean, what am I even saying? You already know what Divine Smite does. Lots and lots of damage, which is exactly what this build wants, is lots and lots of damage, and Divine Smite is going to give that to us. The big thing here, though, is Divine Smite critical hit, allowing us to automatically Divine Smite whenever we hit a critical. This is going to be super important for this build later, as we're going to be getting some things that are going to synergize with this feature to allow us to do a metric ton of damage. You'll see what I mean. As for level 2 as well, we also get a fighting style, and because I've chosen to use a greatsword with this build, we're going with great weapon fighting. However, you can pretty much use any weapon that has like a high modifiers. Mostly +3 weapons is what I would go for. So you could go for things like the Nalruna, the Duelist Prerogative. There are other legendary weapons in the game that are +3 that I'm just forgetting the names of, or our main weapon here. And aside from the Duelist Prerogative, in which you would pick dueling here, I think great weapon fighting is going to do us great for now, although we will get an opportunity to get dueling later, as you will see. We do get to prepare some spells at this level, and of course I want all of these smites. Wrathful Smite to frighten our targets, which I feel like is very on theme for a build like this. Thunderous Smite to lay the smackdown and push enemies away, and Searing Smite to deal fire damage, which I think works in line nicely as we are a tiefling. And finally, your final spell can be whatever you like, although I would kind of avoid the more holy spells, which again, on a paladin is a little bit tricky to do. But so maybe not something like Divine Favor, but maybe something like Compelled Duel or Command would work nicely. At Paladin level 3, we are going to be getting some more stuff from our subclass, in this case Oathbreaker. First up is Control Undead. Use the power of your oath to gain control over an undead creature. The undead will follow you around and attack your enemies. This lasts until a long rest. Probably not going to come up as much, but might have some fun use cases throughout the story. But the main one here is Dreadful Aspect. Let your darkest emotions burst forth as a menacing pulse to frighten nearby enemies. I really wanted to lean into the fear aspect of this build, as this motherfucker is so strong that even the gods cower in fear, and I just love Dreadful Aspect for this. We also get some unique oath spells. Hellish Rebuke. For some reason in my last video I thought Warlock, or not my last video, but a couple of videos ago, I think it was the Monster Tamer, I thought Warlock was the only thing that got Hellish Rebuke. I just completely forgot about Oathbreaker Paladin, and plenty of you were right there to correct me, so yeah, here it is. As a reaction, deal a bit of fire damage. Feels perfect for a build like this. Next up is Inflict Wounds, basically just a big dollop of necrotic damage. Pretty nice, again, all fits on theme here. As a tiefling, we are also going to get Hellish Rebuke this way, because of course you do, because of course I forgot 2 ways to get Hellish Rebuke. So we get another extra usage of it once per long rest. And then finally we do get to prepare another spell, and the game has picked Command for us, which I think I quite like. At Paladin level 4, we are going to be getting our first feat, and you have an option here. You can take an ability score improvement to bump up your charisma, your constitution, your dexterity, what have you. But I think, again, since we are power building, let's get Great Weapon Master. Now, again, if you're not using this Great Sword or another two-handed weapon for this build, this is obviously not going to really do much for you, but since we are using a Great Sword, and this Great Sword that we're using is what I'm going to personally recommend as your end game goal for this build, and I think Great Swords just kind of work for this build in general, or any two-handed weapon, you're definitely going to want Great Weapon Master. Whenever you land a critical hit, which is going to synergize with some things we're going to get later, or kill a target with a melee weapon attack, you can make another melee weapon attack as a bonus action. Attacks with melee weapons you are proficient with, and are wielding in both hands, can deal an extra 10 damage at the cost of a -5 attack roll penalty. You can toggle this on and off. So the idea of this is basically you're trading your chance to hit for more damage, and getting a little bit more when you kill an enemy or land a critical hit. I've stated in the past in older videos that I'm not a huge fan of this, just because I don't like playing around with the odds and blah 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 blah, but honestly, it's great. It's one of the best skill feats in the game, especially if you're power building, and with things like Spiteful Suffering and a few things I'll be showing off later, we will have ways to mitigate that penalty by getting things like Advantage and such, so I feel like this is a pretty good pickup. At Paladin level 5, we're going to be getting the big one. We're going to be getting extra attack. You know it, you love it. Make a second attack in an action. Pretty good. We're also going to be getting some special oath spells, including Crown of Madness. For the cost of our concentration, it causes our enemies to go mad, meaning they attack the creature closest to them, even if they are an ally. And next up, we also get Darkness. Unfortunately, we don't get Devil's Sight in this build, so this might not be as good, but it could be good for basically getting rid of a spellcaster for a turn. Use your imagination. For our racial option, we also get Darkness. It's weird how the class and race option are overlapping here. Very strange. We also are going to be able to prepare some level 2 spells, and I might as well get Branding Smite for now, because again, it kind of just rounds out all of our like special smite spells. Next up at Paladin level 6, we're going to be getting our Aura of Protection, meaning that us and nearby allies gain a bonus to our saving throws equal to our Charisma modifier. It doesn't show it in the tooltip here, but because our Charisma is at 14 right now, that is a +2. Not a lot, but again, feel free to play around with the stats here to bump up our Charisma. And as for our spells, the game has kind of picked Aid for us, and I feel like for a little bit of extra tankiness across the party, that's pretty good if you don't have a Cleric that can do a better job of casting this. And then our final level of Paladin is Paladin level 7, meaning we get Aura of Hate. You and any nearby fiends and undead get an additional 2 damage dealt with melee weapons. Again, this is equal to our Charisma modifier, so if you bump that up higher, you'll get a bit more out of this. Like I say, feel free to play around with the stats on this one, maybe even use the Birthright hat as well, which can definitely help with this build. And finally, we can kind of choose whatever we like here. The game has picked Lesser Restoration, so sure, why not? I'm kind of avoiding Magic Weapon here. You'll see why in a minute. And now we're going to be dropping out of Paladin. As much as I would like this extra feat, we don't actually need it, and there's some other stuff I want from our multi-class more, and that is Bard. Yeah, when I said I was power building, I meant it. Now, obviously, Sorcerer would also be a good option here. Any of the Charisma casters are gonna do you a good job here. Also, Warlock could work if you wanted to lean entirely into Charisma, but you are going to be missing out on higher level spell slots if you went with 5 levels of Warlock, and trying to manage leveling up Paladin and Warlock at the same time, you're going to be delaying extra attack, and, other things, and like your spell slots are going to be all weird for Divine Smites. So you could go the Warlock route if you want, but I've decided to go with Bard for this one. Which means we're going to be getting 2 cantrips, and I obviously want Vicious Mockery. What's better than striking down a god? Taunting them as you do it, as if they are nothing to you. And also friends. Because I like friends. Also spells, let's have a look at these. Again, sticking with the fear aspect, I want Dissonant Whispers, allowing us to deal a bit of psychic damage and frighten a creature. We can also grab Longstrider to be fast enough that even the gods can't escape. That's so dumb, it's a level 1 spell. It gives us a small movement speed increase. It's decent, okay? As a heavy armor boy, you want movement speed. Featherfall, again, is a useful utility option, and I kind of like Thunderwave here, but pick whatever you like. You can pick an instrument. Let's go for drum. I never do drums. And then finally, you do get another proficiency here, and it's entirely up to you what you want to grab. I'm going to suggest Athletics, since we don't already have it, and it would be nice to have a Strength stat quite high. Again, it's going to help us push and resist being pushed, which I think is pretty good for this build. Next up, at Bard level 2, we're going to be getting a few really important things. Jack of all Trades allows us to add half of our proficiency bonus. Half of our proficiency bonus. I might have said that right the first time. I don't actually know. To ability checks that we're not proficient in. Kinda cool, but not necessarily a cornerstone of the build. Song of Rest, which gives us an extra short rest, which is awesome. And we also get another level 1 spell at this point. We can just grab Speak with Animals. At Bard level 3, we are going to be able to pick our subclass. And it's obvious. If we're power building, we're going with College of Swords. This is going to allow us to get a fighting style, and like I say, you can take 2 weapon fighting or dueling here. I'll grab dueling. And also we get the Blade Flourishes, allowing us to make attacks that hit multiple enemies, attacks that give us extra armor class, and attacks that allow us to teleport to push an enemy away and then teleport to them using both ranged and melee weapons, which is just bonkers. And they all do an extra bit of damage equal to our Bardic Inspiration die, which at this point is a d8, but will be even stronger by the time we're at the end of this build. It is still to this day one of the most powerful subclasses in the game. We do get access to level 2 spells at this point, but I've just kind of realised a spell that I absolutely should have taken, and that is Fairy Fire. All targets within the late turn visible and attack rolls against them have advantage. This is going to help us with our Great Weapon Master checks, so it's definitely worth picking up. And in fact, I think I might... Oh, and we also get to skill expertise here, Intimidation, absolutely, and Athletics. And then finally, I think I might replace a spell. Let's replace... Thunderwave, and get a level 2 spell. It's entirely up to you what you want to grab here. Heat Metal could be good. Phantasmal Force for that extra psychic damage. Shatter for the big thunder damage spell. Cloud of Daggers if you want to kind of do something like that. It's entirely up to you. Pick whatever you like. In fact, actually, I might go with Shatter and replace Featherfall instead, because we are going to be getting utility options later from something else. You'll see what I mean. Next up, at Bard level 4, we're going to be getting our final feat of the build, and again, this is kind of a choose your whatever you like situation. We will have 20 strength already, remember that, and I think all the rest of our stats are decent, so let's bump up that charisma. You may find some luck with something else here, but it's entirely up to you. As for our cantrips, you can pick another one here. Let's just go with Mage Hand because it has some utility. And finally, we do get to pick another level 2 spell, and Hold Person actually feels really good here, allowing us to hold an enemy still and always deal critical hits to them as a result of that, meaning that we can get that Divine Smite critical over and over and over again. Yes, it costs our concentration, but hey, we're not actually as worried about that with this build. And finally, at Bard level 5, we're going to be getting our final features here, namely Font of Inspiration to recover our Bardic Inspiration after a short rest as well as a long rest, and then our Bardic Inspiration gets bumped up to a d8, so all of our weapon flourishes get bumped up to a d8, which is super powerful. And then finally, we do get access to level 3 spells, and keeping with the theme, let's grab Fear. Targets drop everything and become fearful. Absolutely awesome. And that is the build. Overall, you're going to be getting a ton of utility here, and, well, a lot of spells. Freaking look, they don't even all fit on the page. I'm just going to put this here. Overall, you're going to be getting a ton of stuff. Like I say, you're going to get the Blade Flourishes, powerful smites and ways to get criticals to make them even stronger. You're going to get Song of Rest, a ton of powerful utility options, your Aura of Protection, your Dreadful Aspect, your Smites, your Spiteful Suffering. Everything here is going to be working in your favor to make you as powerful as possible and get those massive Divine Smites off. So let's get moving on to the equipment here. Now, I'm going to go over the weapon choice first because I think it makes sense here. Any weapon is going to work for this build. I'm not even kidding, everything. I personally recommend two-handed weapons, but because we took both dueling and great weapon fighting, as well as had the option to take two-weapon fighting or other fighting styles as well, any weapon is going to work here. So what I'm going to say is, as you play through the game, just use whatever you prefer, anything you like. It's not really going to matter here, but the end game weapon that I want you to aim for is Baldurin's Giant Slayer, because the way I kind of wanted to visually represent this build's overall this character's corruption as they go throughout their time is with the Illithid Powers. And there's a couple of, and I'll go over them a bit later, but if you kind of go down the Illithid route, again gaining more power by any means necessary, and Illithid's kind of overtaking gods, you know, with the whole Elder Brain fiasco, absolutely makes sense. So, you know, I think that would actually be really fun, and the fact that this is a weapon that not only works perfectly for this build mechanically, but also thematically, being sort of a holy weapon that is being overtaken by Illithid pustules, I think it makes perfect sense for this build. So, let's get into it. This will do 2d6 plus 7 damage. It also adds another plus 4 slashing damage because it doubles the damage from our strength modifier, which means because we have a high strength modifier, it being 20 at this point with the potion, we have a ton of stuff. We have a ton of power, and you can see it does extra necrotic damage, but I'll get to that in a minute. This weapon also gives you advantage on attack rolls against large, huge, or gargantuan creatures. So if you're fighting something large, like a dragon or an ogre or something like that, you're going to be negating that Great Weapon Master penalty as well, which is nice. This is one of the few +3 weapons in the game, and again, as you saw from the thumbnail of this video, we're going to be wanting to get that weapon enchantment as high as possible. But this also comes with a couple of extra features, namely the Giant Form transformation, allowing you to grow to a fearsome size. Your weapons deal an additional 1d6 damage, and you gain 27 temporary hit points, as well as advantage on strength checks and saving throws. Basically a buffed version of Enlarge, allowing you to literally grow larger than life to smack down the gods. And finally, a unique attack, Topple the Big Folk. Deal additional damage equal to your proficiency bonus. On a hit, large, huge, or gargantuan creatures take an additional 2 to 12 slashing damage and must succeed a strength save or fall prone. This can be used once per short rest. Overall, just an absolute powerhouse of a weapon, easily one of the best in the game. But let's get into the other weapon we're using here, and yes, it's the Darkfire Shortbow, leave me alone. But it just makes perfect sense. Again, if we're power building, being able to give ourselves haste is great as well as the resistances and a ranged option if we need it. It just makes so much sense for this build to get haste this way. But it's entirely up to you if you wanted to swap this out for something else, but I wanted haste because, well, what's better than 2 Divine Smites per turn? 4 Divine Smites per turn, so yeah, absolutely want haste on this build. Let's get into the equipment now. Here we have Savarok's Horned Helmet. You gain Dark Vision up to a range of 3 meters or 15 meters if you already have it. The number you need to roll a critical hit while attacking is reduced by 1. This effect can stack. Basically, this is going to give us a higher chance to hit those crits, which we absolutely want to do. And also we have Dauntless. You cannot be frightened and cannot be inflicted with other emotion-altering conditions. Basically, your rage is unending, and you show no fear, in contrast to the fear you inflict on others. This is an Act 3 option, so you can swap this out for the Act 1 Grimskull Helm, which gives you resistance to fire damage, which we already have because we're a tiefling, you know, whatever. But it would also stop critical hits from being able to land against you, and also give you a usage of Hunter's Mark, which again, targeting someone and hunting them down, it's kind of this build's shtick. So the Grimskull Helm will work well in from Act 1 onwards until you get to Act 3 and pick this one up. Next up is the Armour of Devotion. I picked this up just because it's kind of a Paladin armor, but then I coloured it with a darker colour to make it look kind of corrupted and like rusted a little bit. And I think it works out really nicely, but the armour doesn't actually matter here, you can choose whatever you like. But this does come with Eternal Devotion, allowing us to regain a Channel Oath charge once per long rest, which I think works out kind of nicely for us since we only have, 1. So having 2, I think, is pretty nice. Anyways. Next up we have the Dark Justiciar Gauntlets. Your weapon attacks deal an additional 1 to 4 necrotic damage, and you can cast Beckoning Darkness. Chaos a creature to be haunted by darkness. It takes 2 to 16 necrotic damage if it enters or starts its turn in a lightly or heavily obscured area. Now I'm going to spend the next minute or 2 talking about a kind of an Act 2 big spoilers, so if you want to skip ahead a couple of minutes to when I talk about these, go ahead. But basically, the idea is in Act 2 you obviously come across the Night Song, and again, this character sees the literal child of a god in front of them. What the hell do you think they're gonna do? So, you might pick up the Dark Justiciar Gauntlets that way, the upgraded version. But the unupgraded version is still pretty good, giving us the main thing we want, which is that necrotic damage buff. However, we can get that extra spell if we decide to actually be evil. Because I think this character has the unique perspective of being able to be an evil character, that actually thinks they are righteous, without necessarily needing to be a dark urge, and I think that actually works out in a really cool way. Anyways, spoilers over, we're now onto the Boots of Speed. I basically just picked these because a lot of the time we aren't really using our bonus action unless we're using, Divine Sense or our Smite spells. So just getting a bit more mobility makes sense for this build. Just being able to dash as a bonus action. Trust me, it feels really good in practice, even if it seems a little bit simple and not really that impactful in theory. When you actually play the game with this buff, it makes a ton of sense. But of course, swap this out for whatever you like. And next up we have the Spellcrux Amulet. This is going to give us spell slot restoration, allowing us to restore up to our maximum level of spell slots once per long rest as a bonus action. Basically this just means that we can get an extra high level smite once per long rest, because we only have 2 level 4 slots here, but with this we effectively have 3, meaning another extra big smite. But again, you can kind of swap this out for whatever you like. In fact, you could use this and then swap it out for another amulet. Once you've gotten the spell slot restoration, you don't need it anymore. It's entirely up to you. And next up, one of the most important pieces of this build, the Killer's Sweetheart. Whenever you kill a creature, your next attack roll is guaranteed to be a critical hit. Once spent, this effect refreshes after a long rest. Now, this says your next attack will be a crit, but actually this is a reaction that you can bank and use whenever you want to. You don't have to use it on your next attack. So you can basically kill a add or just a minor enemy and then save that banked crit for whenever you next need it. I feel like this is a super powerful. Again, it's going to guarantee you get at least one big hit off. And then finally we have the Ring of Arcane Synergy. This is a complete throwaway slot. Use this for whatever you like, but if you're casting things like if you cast Vicious Mockery, you taunt your enemy and then are able to go in with a couple of turns of extra damage, that can be pretty fun, but it's entirely up to you. Pick up whatever you like here and put it in the slot, it really doesn't matter. Now, the other thing I'm going to be showing off very briefly here is our Illithid Powers. There are only a couple that I really wanted to focus on here, and I'll explain why as we go through. Psionic Overload, basically giving us just an extra little bit of damage on each of our attacks at a cost to ourselves. We deal 1d4 psychic damage, but we take the same amount each turn. This can be used once per short rest. I feel like this character literally damaging their own body for more power makes total sense, a bit of a limit breaker. And next up is Concentrated Blast. If we're concentrating on something like one of our Smite spells, Dissonant Whispers, I believe, is also concentration, or perhaps I'm wrong, or any of our concentration options that we picked up like Fear, or Crown of Madness, or anything like that, being able to basically dispel that for a massive psychic damage attack felt like it made sense in my head, so I decided to pick it up. But the main Illithid power that I really wanted to get for this build is Luck of the Far Realms. Whenever you make a successful attack roll against a foe, you can choose to change it into a critical hit, and I believe this is once per long rest, or is it once per short rest? I can't exactly remember. Once per long rest feels right, but it doesn't actually say here. Basically what this is going to allow us to do is, well, bank another critical. This means we have 2 criticals saved to use whenever we want, meaning that we can absolutely eviscerate a big boss. I mean, you'll see on the combat footage, it's very short combat footage, so I really like having this as well. Of course, you have the rest of the Illithid powers to work with, but you'll have to discover any potential combinations on your own when you try this build for yourself, because I know you're going to play it. Why else would you watch my videos? You don't just watch these things to take in information that you're never actually going to apply practically, right? Oh, I just called out some of you, I know I did. And I believe that's everything to go over as far as this build is concerned. But then, what's the gimmick here? Like, I've just built a pretty decent paladin that is able to crit fish. Where does this build get interesting? Well, with the devil on our shoulder. I don't believe this character's corruption was entirely their own. I believe they were manipulated by this evil sorcerer right here named Jacelyn. Sure, let's go with that. Basically what this guy does is he's kind of the evil devil in our shoulder, supporting us in every way, but also manipulating us into doing his own bidding, because when we slay the gods, he intends to take their place and rule over all, and become the very thing that our main character here hates. But still, for now, he is helping him on his journey. Now, I won't go into the in-detail levels, but I'll go over a few things that are important to know. We started off as a sorcerer to give us a couple of things. We are a Draconic sorcerer picking up the white dragon ancestry, allowing us to cast Armour of Agathis, giving us extra temporary HP and a counter-attack against anyone that attacks us. If we just look here, yes, we deal cold damage to enemies and gain 5 temporary HP per level cast. Overall, it's a nice buff, but more importantly, it's an Abjuration spell, which, because we're playing as an Abjuration wizard, allowing us to use Arcane Ward, which will block damage that comes our way as long as we charge it up with Abjuration spells, and Armour of Agathis is a damn good one. And going to level 10 in this, we're going to get a few features like being able to gain Arcane Ward equal to our wizard level automatically once per at the start of a new day, so after a long rest. and a bunch of other obviously useful wizard features, but the main thing is what we get at level 6, which is the ability to project our arcane ward onto our allies, protecting them from damage. So this synergizes well with being able to protect our main character and keep them alive. So yeah, with that as well, we can also pick up a level of Cleric, and I've picked up War Cleric just because it gives us heavy armor proficiency, and I know this guy isn't really a holy man, but I needed a level of Cleric to grab Sanctuary, which is another great Abjuration spell, but it's also going to make us invulnerable so that our main character can be the one that does all the fighting, while this guy sits back and buffs them. But what exactly is the main thing we're buffing them with? Well, magic weapon, because I found a unique interaction. So, we have the Drakethroat Glaive on our person, allowing us to cast Draconic Elemental Weapon. And we can just kinda cast it here. We'll just use the Thunder buff for now, just for whatever. But here's the thing, we can also cast Magic Weapon at the 6th level. And if we do, the weapon that we cast it on becomes a +3, gains an additional +3 weapon enchantment. So, if we cast this on our main character, they now have a +7 weapon, a +3 base enchantment with the +1 from the Draconic Elemental Weapon, as well as the additional 1d4 of thunder damage. Ignore the fact that it says -1 slashing, that's just, oh yeah, there you go, it's disappeared anyway. And then also an extra +3 from Magic Weapon. As long as this guy doesn't break concentration, that extra +3 is going to stay, but we'll always have that extra +1 regardless. Meaning now this weapon does holy shit damage pretty much at all times. So yeah, this is where this massive bit of power comes from. Again, not the most power buildy build in the world, but it's up there, and I absolutely love it, because again we get this cool glow and like all that cool shit. It's a really fun interaction. I did not realize Draconic Elemental Weapon and Magic Weapon stacked, but now that they do, hoo boy. So yeah, this is going to make things like our Flourishes extremely strong, our Divine Smites are just, well, I mean, hold on. Yeah, look at that. That is big damage. That is big damage. Oh, that's even bigger. Yeah, we do massive damage, and you think we have the ability to use all of this damage on crits, where we're doing maximum amounts of damage? Again, you'll see the combat footage. It's insane. But as far... Wait, no, I didn't want to attack him! Well, you know what? We're going to see what this does. It didn't kill because of Arcane Ward. That's how good Arcane Ward is. Anyways, the equipment on this build doesn't really matter. It's mainly here to support this build, so you can kind of slap whatever you like on it. But I figured I'd show off some equipment that could work nicely anyway. Here we have the Pointy Hat. Shout out to the YouTuber Pointy Hat, because he makes amazing videos and was a huge inspiration for this channel. But this basically allows us to gain a bonus to persuasion checks equal to our intelligence modifier. Again, despite us having a slightly lower charisma score, this man is a manipulator, so this felt right just to have one here, and I just wanted to show it off because, again, I like the YouTuber it's named after. And they mainly just have some armor class boosting gear here through the Cloak of Protection, the Evasive Shoes, and the Ring of Protection. Again, just kind of bumping up our AC. We are a Draconic Sorcerer, so we do have mage armor naturally, so it's whatever. Now, we also have the Moon Devotion Rope here, and I kind of just wanted to show this off because I never think I'll be able to again, because when am I ever going to make a build that actually uses this, because the way you get it in-game is, like, really evil, and I don't think an evil character would wear a Saluna thing. You know what I mean. But anyway, I'm just going to show it off here. Basically, it just means that you can cast Mage Armor on yourself, you get Produce Flame for free, and while you have Mage Armor up, and you succeed a saving throw, the source of the saving throw takes a bit of radiant damage, and you have advantage on con checks, which is awesome for a spellcaster. But again, we gave this guy the ability to wear heavy armor, and I think with the Illithid theme we've got going on here, the Cerebral Citadel armor looks awesome here. So, literally put on whatever you want, it doesn't matter. I've also grabbed the Crypt Lord ring, because I feel like being able... No, that's the Killer Sweetheart. That's meant to be the Crypt Lord ring. I've messed up my weapon accessory selection here. So, I'll have an infographic on screen here, but basically, I've used it in a lot of my builds. It just allows us to cast Create Undead, and have a big undead minion, which makes sense for this build. Apologies for the error. And also, I've gone with the Corvid token here, just because the idea of this guy turning into a raven and just kind of literally being the devil on our main character's shoulder by landing on their shoulder and like whispering evil ideas into their ear. I don't know, I just really liked that. So I went with the Corvid token here. And finally, we have the Spell Might Gloves. Whenever you cast a spell that requires an attack roll, you can take a -5 penalty to the roll to deal an additional 1d8 damage. Basically, a worse version of the Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter, but for spells. I don't even know if it works on this build, because I can't remember if I took anything that actually does an attack roll. So it might be completely useless, but again, I wanted to show it off. Just put whatever you like in this slot. It really doesn't matter. It can be whatever you like. We're mainly just here to get that magic weapon buff. And unfortunately, no, we cannot just leave the person who cast magic weapon in camp and dismiss them from our party, as dismissing them breaks the enchantment, because dismissing a character from your party breaks their concentration. So that doesn't work. However, we can keep them in our party, allow them to buff us with Arcane Ward, and keep themselves alive with Sanctuary, while we deal all the big damage. And if they're not using Sanctuary, they can use something like Mirror Image, and start hitting people with fireballs and all that sort of thing to help us from afar, and also summon things with Conjure Elemental and Conjure Minor Elemental to be able to help us out that way by summoning extra little minions. They're basically just a fully support-based character that is able to keep themselves alive and stop themselves from getting hit in order to keep up their concentration on magic weapon to give us that massive buff. That is their whole purpose. But again, we have some alternatives for equipment here. If you don't care about the Spell Might gloves, you can grab the gloves of dexterity to dump your dex and put it into other stats. Maybe have this guy be the face of the party with intelligence, wisdom, and charisma checks. Entirely up to you. Like I said, the Cerebral Citadel armor could work well as heavy armor if you don't fancy going with the clothing or mage armor route. And finally, obviously the Markiplier staff would be a great endgame staff here, but the staff of spell power also works. Basically, the main thing you get from it is you basically get everything the Markiplier staff would give you, except for Kareska's favor. So it is slightly worse, but I felt like showing it off because in any other case, I would show off the Markiplier staff. But you can also just keep the Drakethroat Glaive equipped if you just want them to be able to do melee attacks as well. But any staff you pick up along the way in game is going to work perfectly for this build. We mainly just want this guy to buff our main character. So yeah, those are the builds. In the build video that in the combat footage you're currently seeing, I didn't bring the companion along because the companion that I have here is a redesigned hireling. So I kind of just had Lae'zel level up all the way in War Cleric, cast magic weapon on us, so we're effectively getting the main part of the build that we want anyway, and sent this guy into battle with a +7 weapon. He's not even an Oathbreaker in this either. He's actually an Oath of Vengeance Paladin, because you can't break the oath until after you start the game proper. But again, you'll see it doesn't really matter, because the combat footage is going to be over in like a couple minutes. It is insane how much damage this build does. I mean, you're going to see, I don't know exactly how parallel the footage on screen is to what I'm saying now, but we kill the boss in 2 hits and then kill the Mind Flayer in 1. Yeah. This is probably one of the strongest builds I've ever made, and yes, it is a duo build, so technically it requires 2 characters to pull off, but who cares? The lore of this build is awesome. The story behind the character, I absolutely love it. And again, it was really interesting to experiment with making an evil character evil, because let's get this straight, they are evil. They're evil because they think they're right, and because they're being manipulated by the very evil motherfucker who's also in their party. But, you know, it doesn't... But the thing is, it was nice to make an evil character that wasn't a Dark Urge. And I feel like playing an evil character outside of just being a Dark Urge is very underrated in this game, and I really think it's worth exploring a bit more. So I hope you guys do so when you give this build a try, or if you do, or if you just want to play another evil campaign and you want to change things up, so maybe don't play a Dark Urge and see how that changes things. You don't have to be a subconscious serial murderer to be a bad guy. But yeah, no, I absolutely loved making this build. It was super, super fun, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it here, because again, I think the combat footage is gonna be over soon. I'm recording this on the Friday, so the live stream that I was gonna be doing this week, the collaboration live stream, kind of new thing for the channel, will have happened over the weekend, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.